And do you realize how easy it gets transferred from hamburgers to every other area of life? And all of a sudden, you can have a laptop in the color you want, with a biometric reading that simply reads your fingerprint. You can have the car the way you want it. You can have your ice cream the way you want it, and the comb the way you want it. You can have your hair the color you want it, if you've got it. You can even get hair that's not yours. You can have your physique the way you want it. You can have your spouse the way you want it. You can have your children the way you want it. In our culture, you can pick your family. If you don't like your family, you can pick another one, or you can go your own way. Gates lead to ways. The narrow way, the way of the godly. It's a hard way. It's a way of self-denial and the cross. The word narrow literally, we get our word stenography. You know what stenography is? I mean, I don't even know if they teach that class in. But I remember my business ed teacher in high school many years ago, about the time the Earth's crust hardened, Mr. Edgerton. Teaching typing. We learned on manual typewriters for about 2 weeks. Then we got to switch with the other half of the class and got to use an electric typewriter. Boy, we thought we'd dive down to heaven when we went to that electric. Instead of having to drive your finger through the desktop to make an impression on that paper. He taught stenography. Stenography is a way of writing things in a shortened way. Narrow, you constrict the writing. You restrict it. The word narrow here is the word stenos. It means to restrict. Constriction. It literally was the sound made when you had something squeeze the air out of you. It meant groaning. Say, I wish I could sit here this morning and say to you, if you enter the narrow gate, it will be easy for you. It will not. But my question is it easy now anyway? And if you tell me the truth, you will say, no, it's not. It's impossible. I want someone to deliver me from this. The broad way. It's the way of the ungodly. Again, read Psalm 1 on your own and discover that this is something that is consistently portrayed from Genesis through Revelation, this idea of two. The broad way is the way of the ungodly. It looks easy. It's attractive. It's inclusive. It's indulgent. It's permissive. Look at that silly picture on that folder this morning. LA. You can't get there from here. I know a few places in Missouri. That's why we got Garmin's. That's why we got GPS on our phones. That's why we got Google. The broad way, the way of the ungodly, looks easy, it's attractive, it's inclusive, it's indulgent, it's permissive. Billions of people travel it. There are many people there. You're not alone. It's not hard. It's not constrictive or restrictive. It doesn't call on you to make much of a choice. Proverbs 14:12 says, there is a way which seems right to man, but its end is the way of death. Read very carefully Matthew 7:13 and 14 again on your own. I want to ask you a question. Are there any signs on those two roads? Does the narrow way say this way to heaven, and the broad way say this way to hell? No. In fact, both roads say this way to heaven. But if you have two gates and you have two ways, then you have two destinations. The signs on both roads read this way to heaven. Now here's the reality, and let me tell you something. We live in a time in which we don't want to deal with reality. But here's the reality. While both signs say they lead to heaven, only one does. The other one leads to destruction. The two destinations. First is life. I have come that you might have life. I have come that you might have abundant life. I have come that you might have life everlasting. I have a very good question I want to ask you. When does eternal life begin? Be very careful how you answer it. The life that Jesus talks about in this 2-verse section of the Sermon on the Mount is simply this. This life is life everlasting. And it is a life that has in view the quality of life. The quality of life. Not the number of years, not the quantity of it, but the quality of it. Life here, everlasting life, is a quality of life. In fact, it is the life of God in the soul of man. Jot down, if you will, you can read it on your own later, Psalm 17:15. Here's what the psalmist says. As for me, I shall behold your face in righteousness, and I will be satisfied with your likeness when I awake. Let me ask you a question. When you go to sleep tonight, ask yourself one question. Lord, if I should wake in the morning, what will satisfy me? I would just like to dismiss all of you. You go enjoy your Labor Day weekend. Whatever you go do now, I want you to ask one question. When I'm done doing it, will it satisfy me? When Jesus talks about life here, he's talking about quality of life. And everlasting life is the life of God in the soul of man. And for the psalmist in the here and now, as he writes it in Psalm 17:15, is simply this, that the next morning when I wake up, what will satisfy me? And he says, when I awake in your righteousness and see your face. Now you have to understand the culture of that phrase, see your face. It's the idea of being asked into the presence of the king. You never go there because you can. You go into the presence of a king in Near Eastern culture when you are invited. And then the question becomes, am I invited into his presence? Two destinations. Life, everlasting life, is a quality of life. It's only found in God. And it's only attained by coming to Jesus Christ in faith. The other destination is destruction. Doesn't mean annihilation or extinction. You really ought to do some serious study on what people believe about what happens to them when they die. There are a group of people who've been paying a great deal of money to have their bodies frozen before they die. It's called the process of cryogenics. They think in 100 years science will progress enough they can unfreeze them, thaw them out, resuscitate them, and solve the maladies of their human body so that they will live longer and better.